Oh, hi guys. I just wanted to tell y'all about the time that I actually talked myself away from Harvey Weinstein. Okay, so because being older than a lot of the people or younger girls, of course, was a different era, but it was only 20 years ago, and but I was already in my 40s. So when I was in my 20s, you know, of course, like all of us were, I was a lot cuter then in my 20s, but this was in my 40s. But men were always coming on to us at the bars, everything. So, and as I've gotten older, I started just being more friendly to everybody because, I've had to, you know, support myself by, selling insurance or advertising or being a substitute teacher or, just even with the acting or, always selling stuff. I've sold Mary Kay, whatever. Okay, so you don't want to, I mean, if you followed some of my videos, you may already know some of that stuff. So, but we just talked our way out of things, and I had to too talk my way out of stuff too, because of what I went through as a child, young girl, whatever. That's a whole nother story. So, but basically, I just started talking to Harvey Weinstein, and we were talking. I didn't even know who it was. Yet again, do your research, people. And he had come to a party at my little apartment complex over in the marina, and then, but anyway, then he told me about another party, and so, like an idiot, I mean, it wasn't very far, so I actually drove him there, and then when we got there, nobody was showing up. But we sat out there. We talked for the longest time, actually. He talked about the film business, and he knew a lot of people. And I found his card in my purse later. I realized who it was. But, he talked about a lot of stuff. But sooner or later, he started to make some advances. And, you know, some, I said no. And you know how I got out of it? I just kept talking. And, you know, even when men are in that mood, you can really talk a guy out of almost anything because men can be really talked out of stuff. And I've got the gift of gab, so you can use that to your advantage. Now, usually the very slim, quiet women seem to get the men, usually as far as like, but sometimes I've always been too friendly and they see me as a sister or whatever. But men like that, they really, I think they see all women as a conquest, and some men are like that. So, but I just talked myself out of it. And then I even told him about something that happened to me growing up. And I think he felt a little sorry for me and he understood. And I even told him, I said, well, if I'd met him back, there was a time in my 20s, where I was a little bit wild after I had a breakup or, had to break up with a fiance. He didn't want kids and I did. And in between that and then I had a very traumatic 8 months of marriage, which was just to the wrong person. We met at work. It was just wrong from the get-go for both of us, really. I mean, for me, it really was. So, but there were different vulnerable times in my life where, I thought, well, and I was still really cute and, could pretty much get, whatever guy was interested in. But I always just let them make the advances. I've never been flirty enough, I suppose, to get the kind of men that I was interested in. I mean, I remember one time at tennis, I liked this one guy, and I played tennis with him, and it was in a group, but I always got so nervous to talk with him, and I felt that way whenever I did run into the Brad Pitt or, any guy that I feel attracted to. Sometimes I feel that way. And the more attracted I am to them, the more overwhelmed I feel, like, oh my gosh, the feelings, whatever. So, but yeah, with the Weinstein, I just talked my way out of it. And so if you ever run into some guy like that, just talk your way out of it. And I just turned it into a whole thing where all of a sudden you can psychologically shut someone down, make it all business. I had to do that sometimes as an insurance agent. I had some close calls with some men, like, so, because we would go to their home or office sometime, and usually their wife was supposed to be there, but for some reason she wasn't, and then they would make advances. That only happened seriously twice, and it was kind of creepy. And one time I got the check anyway. I was like, I talked and kind of just diffused the situation, but it's not easy. But of course, what I went through in childhood with someone growing up, I was able to talk my way away from him a lot more than I realized until later. But as you get older, you do have that gift of being able to talk to people. And I did talk my way out of one time in college. Some crazy kid was trying to attack me, and was trying to get, like, attract me, like, it was kind of, it's a whole nother thing, but I got away from him too. So, but yeah, you can get your way out of situations sometimes with just talking to people. You can talk them down and then you get away, and so with Weinstein, I was just able to, at that point, I had control of the situation, and I took him to his car and dropped him off. But he was, I had to wait for him out in the front for quite a while, whatever, he was doing so, or, he was like, I don't know, I guess maybe, I don't know. But anyway, you just get away from people, but don't ever, you get older and you think you don't have to worry as much, but I was still kind of young then too, because I was in my 40s, see, and I've always kind of looked young for my age, so because I remember even in my early 20s, I would go to nightclubs with friends and go dancing, and sometimes I'd get stopped at the door and they said, "Oh, you're still in high school," and then they'd see my driver's license and they'd see I was clearly out of college and like 22 years old or whatever. One guy even thought I was in middle school, And sometimes when you're younger, that's annoying, but when you get to be my age, it's kind of nice, but, in a way, but to look young for your age, because I'll probably always look kind of young for my age, but you don't always feel it. But actually, I'll give another little free ad, but it's a product I'm selling too for Angela Shelton. These Hot Mom products and Sacred Circus Angela Shelton products. She's got all kinds of great oils and everything, and it cures all kinds of cures you of all kinds of ailments, including aches and pains and itches and all the stuff that happens when you get older, but for younger people too. It's for all ages. So, and it makes you feel good, and it smells good, and it's good for you. And so check out my, I've shared my affiliate link on various websites. So, but yeah, she's helped me overcome some things. She's a great healer, and she deemed me the celery queen gene, and that's kind of tied into all this. And it's kind of liberating to talk about this stuff, because once you get it out there, then it kind of diffuses the situation, because basically by sort of not engaging with, not replying to any of those imposters anymore, it doesn't feed an unhealthy relationship. Because, say, even for example, if any of those really were Brad Pitt, would you go for 5 years with just texting with someone, like that, and not seeing them in person? And actually, I've dated men that, eventually we would see each other in person, but on and off. But there are men that they like to do that. And I remember one time a guy who was 20 years younger when I first turned, well, I guess you know I'm probably at least 60, but anyway, and then he was like 40. He was turning 40 and I was turning 60. I guess I was 59 and he was 39. And I met him on one of those sites, OkCupid, and he just started in, the love bombing and everything, just like the imposters do. But then when we met, once they like go with you and get whatever they need, they're like serial daters, and then they're just on to their next conquest. And I even researched it, and that guy was on some kind of website where women were complaining about him for the same thing. And not only that, that he was a cheapskate, and he was always bringing coupons and never had any money on him or hardly any money on him. And, so I have to date a man that at least has some money because, I don't know, I think I was raised old-fashioned, but I have always been independent. I've always been on my own and everything. And, but for whatever reason, I've never made a lot of money. So, and then there were some mix-ups with my money situation and different things. And you've got to catch all these errors. You've got to constantly stay on top of things nowadays, or you can get basically in another way. You can get, whatever. So, but I just wanted to share that with you, so that may help you sometime if you're at a party or a club or on a date. And if you're not interested, you're not interested. Either you're attracted to someone or you're not, okay? And there's been a few times in my life when I've been attracted to someone and they weren't interested in me either, so just let it go. It's like sometimes it is love at first sight, but sometimes it's not, and sometimes the circumstances don't allow for the love at first sight to grow either. But, it's kind of like when you get older, you can always just go down to the shelter and get a dog or cat and or the pet store or whatever. And when you see your pet, they'll be your love at first sight because it just clicks. Or like in later years, as I've gotten older, the last few years, I've met some new friends and we just get along so well. Now, we don't spend a lot of time together, and a lot of times we're just on Zoom or talking on the phone because we don't even live in the same cities. But as you get older, your friend group can change. And I'm still friends with people from, high school, college, even, younger than that. But you don't see them all the time, and you don't have the same interests, and you don't click. Same thing with romantic relationships. Sometimes one person will like the other one more than the other. And, when you think about it, a romantic relationship is, some people it's just magic and they get lucky and it works out the first time, they get it right the first time, whatever, and they're together all their life and they're very lucky. But for a lot of us, it's not always that smooth. And I thought it was interesting. I follow Kyle Cease. I can't always afford his little program. It's not very much, just a few, like $20 or $30 a month, or maybe it's a little more than that. But like I used to be able to do that. I don't think I can do that anyway. I don't believe I'm on that anymore. I've had to like totally streamline anything I'm doing, including any apps or whatever. So, but what I was going to say is. My dog is just barking at some people outside. So there's another dog out there too. So, but my dog's in here. So, and my cat is too. So, but that's all. I just wanted to share that with you. And, sometimes it's just not in the, it's not in the cards. It's not in the, realm for us. And, in jobs too, or auditions, it's kind of like if you book a really good role in a film that pays a lot, which I guess technically I haven't ever booked anything that paid a lot, so, or a big role, like theater, like I've booked some theater work or done some theater where, there was no pay, but it was a great challenging role. Or like in classes, you can do that, or in student films, and it's a great role and you get a lot of practice. But like booking something like that, like a big time thing, or getting a really good job, um, or just making the right kind of friends, or romantic. A lot of it is you're working on yourself and your self growth, and then you'll meet more people that are more in alignment with you. But sometimes it's just kind of chance and luck and everything, and not everybody gets the right person. And anyway, back to Kyle Cease, he always says that sometimes in life people just grow and change so much, they're just not compatible with the same person all their life, and don't feel bad about having different partners in your life and not having the same person all your life, or even if you go a long time without anyone, which I've done that too. And I think it's interesting because I've shared that same concept about jobs and careers. I overcame a lot of things from childhood that I went through, and with a particular parent, and not to go into all that again, but I have shared stuff on some other videos before about it, but in other places online. But basically, when you go through that, you change, and then you're different, and then the economy changes. So some jobs and careers that were easier ways to make a living are not as easy now, or maybe you're older and that industry hires more younger people. Like, for example, I am actually working on trying to at least get some freelance work back in the news business, which I started out in. Now, I may never get a full-time job in the news business unless I get more of a behind-the-camera kind of job, because they usually hire really younger people. And it's a lot of it's about looks and being skinny, and or just good looks, and or also younger people are generally faster on their feet, they're sharper, whatever. But we're wise. When we get older, we're wise. So, and the same thing applies to relationships. So he sort of has that same theory that I have about different jobs and careers, and don't beat up on yourself. I've had a number of judgmental people in my life judge me because I've had a number of different jobs and careers, when actually deep down inside I really just wanted to be like a Susie Homemaker kind of person and do like fun careers and fun jobs. But it didn't work out, and maybe on some level that I don't even realize I'm too independent to do that. I mean, I'm very my own person. However, with the right guy, I think I could definitely settle down, especially at my age. It would be pretty easy peasy. I'm sure there'd be some, it wouldn't be perfect. I'm sure there'll be some, when you deal with anybody else, including yourself, it can be, there can be some challenges, but I'm pretty ready to settle down at this point in my life for sure. So, but it's okay if I don't. I'm trying to get more jobs, and in the meantime, if my money's tight, I have this philosophy that I need to lose weight anyway. And if I really, I've tried to pay my internet or my phone, but if you really can't, you can always go down to Starbucks or whatever, and as long as you have money for your animals. So, technically maybe I should try to get some kind of a benefits or something, but I've just never done that. I don't think it's a good idea unless, you got to be careful with that. I'm pretty independent. I just have run into age discrimination at jobs. In fact, I've even been hired for jobs, and then as soon as they saw because I looked younger for my age, and then as soon as they saw my driver's license, they thought, oh wow. So I don't know what they think's going to happen. I guess they think we're going to kill over right there. And like I said, my granny outlived a lot of people. She lived to be 99, and it was very unfortunate. My mom only lived to be 80, which to me is still, kind of young, especially, being older. I think, that's still kind of young, But she did get cancer, and that affected, her not living to be 100, because if she hadn't have gotten cancer, I'm sure she would have lived as long as her mom, my granny. So my grandmother. So, okay, guys, well, that's a lot to absorb, and if you've listened to the whole thing, I hope you got something out of it. I guess the major points were, if you ever go to LA or you go somewhere where you think there's going to be celebrities, kind of find out in advance who they all are, so that, and then that way you'll know questions to ask them too. But I thought that without knowing who he was, I was quite impressed with Weinstein's knowledge of the film business. We talked a lot about all that because at that point I had already been to a number of acting classes. I was doing some auditions, had some agents, but I was also, when I wasn't doing that or substitute teaching, I was doing a ton of extra work. I mean, back then you could be an extra almost every day, some features, and so I was really following the industry quite a bit, and had been to some events, and I had even back then, and then even years later, I met some really nice celebrities like Jeff Goldblum is so interesting, and he's so nice. He's 6'6". You can't miss him. You will recognize him if you see him, and he's such a nice person too. He does not make you feel inferior or anything. He's just such a down to earth, humble kind of guy, and I think that was just so cool. So, but they're all like that. I mean, I'm sure they've all had their moments and their experiences with all kinds of people, and they're busy, and they have an image to upkeep, and they have to be cautious. And LA has got, well, everywhere's got crazy people now, but LA certainly has its fair share of you know, all kinds of people. So I'm going to go now, guys, and it was nice talking to you guys. I hope you got something out of it. If you want to share, I'm getting ready to turn it off, but if you want to share something you'd like to hear about, let me know. And if you want to know what it was like to be an insurance agent or substitute teacher or news reporter for small papers or editor, or pursuing an acting career or being an actor or an extra, just ask questions, ask away. You know, and after my video yesterday, but maybe I realized later maybe the guy was joking, because I had someone that they didn't have his picture, but you know, he might be a nice person, or who knows who it is. But they were saying, "Oh, can we message privately now?" and all that. And I was wanting to bring that up. You got to be careful with that, because that's what the imposters do. It's better to kind of know people online, and a lot of people online are who they say they are, and they're real. So that said, over and out, guys. They're not all, there's not, I mean, the web isn't just totally full of imposters, but there are a lot out there. But a lot of people are really who they say they are. So, okay, I gotta go now. Bye.